pleasure to be here. These Singularity University conferences are growing exponentially. Has anybody mentioned that word? Okay, then I don't have to mention it. Diane Francis just mentioned that cell phones represent $1 trillion of investment. Actually, each cell phone represents $1 trillion of computation and communication circa 1965, $1 billion circa 1980. Had an onstage dialogue with Christine Lagarde, head of the IMF, at their annual conference, and she asked me, where are all these productivity gains from all this exciting digital technology? And I said, well, we factor them out because we put them in the numerator and the denominator. So when this African girl buys a smartphone for $50, it can access all of human knowledge. It counts for $50 of economic activity, despite the fact that it's $1 trillion of computation and communication circa 1965. And I was excited as a teenager to spend $3,000 to get an Encyclopedia Britannica, and it was a beautiful set of 30 volumes. I now have a much better encyclopedia, and it counts for no economic activity. He says, yes, the digital world has all these very exciting things that's kind of different, but you can't eat information technology, you can't wear information technology, you can't live in it. So all of that's going to change. That's what this conference is about. 3D printing, which I'll talk about in a moment. I'm sure it has been talked about quite a bit here. That will transform manufacturing. I think it's in a nascent stage right now. New forms of food production. Vertical agriculture is going to radically transform food manufacturing. Energy production is transforming. So I want to say a few things about how the world of physical things is becoming an information technology. And then I want to share a few comments on the future of employment, which has been discussed here. I'll give you my own perspective on that. So manufacturing has two different aspects to it. It has a logistical aspect of coordinating these sometimes millions of components that go into a manufactured good and shipping them all around the world and having them show up at just the right time in the right place. And there's the physical parts that go into manufacturing. That first part has become an information technology. One industry after another transformed from not being an information technology to being an information technology. And my primary thesis, which I discovered in the early 80s, trying to find a way to time my own inventions, which you've heard about, the law of accelerating returns, which is that the future, one aspect of the future is remarkably predictable. Not everything, and not every technology, but information technology follows a predictable trajectory. The price performance and the capacity of information technology progresses exponentially and very predictably. I had these doubly exponential curves on a logarithmic scale through 1980 and 1981. I projected it out to 2050. We're now in, more than 35 years later, and it's exactly where it should be. It's really remarkable how predictable that is, and exponentials are quite transformative because 30 steps linearly, and that's our intuition about the future. It gets you to 30, and 30 steps exponentially gets you to 1 billion. And that's what we've already seen in computation, communication, genetic sequencing, and many other information technologies. So health and medicine, for example, and we have a conference on that. Exponential medicine was a linear process. It was hit or miss. We just find things accidentally. Still useful. I gave a talk not too long ago to junior high school kids, science winners from around the country, 12 and 13-year-olds, and I said, you all would be senior citizens if it hadn't been for this progress. Life expectancy was 19 1,000 years ago, but it has been linear. And all the projections that people make about projecting the future of Medicare and Social Security and life insurance plans are based on a continued linear projection. Say, we factor in continued scientific progress, but based on the old linear model. The cutting edge of health and medicine is now in information technology. Not just that we use computers to keep medical records, but that we're actually treating biology as software, which is fundamentally what it is, and that was enabled by the Genome Project, which was itself a perfect exponential. So health and medicine is transforming into an information technology. We now see a trickle of impact. That's going to become a flood over the next decade. We can now fix a broken heart, not yet from romance, but that'll take some more advances in virtual reality. But from a heart attack, we can reprogram adult stem cells to rejuvenate the heart. I'm involved with a company on the board which has been involved with Singularity University, where we're growing organs by modifying stem cells to grow organs with your DNA and have an unlimited supply. In this case, kidneys, lungs, and hearts. Other companies are working on other organs. This has been done successfully in animals, sophisticated animals like pigs, which are actually pretty close to humans biologically. This is coming to a human near you soon. So biology, health and medicine is undergoing that grand transformation. Manufacturing has done part of it. The logistics of manufacturing, which is a very important part of it, it's at least half of the value, if not more, is definitely in information technology. We've heard some discussion about one country versus another, but manufacturing and the world economy is very much a world phenomena. I mean, any product you pick up, maybe the last step was done in the United States or China, but it has components and interventions from all over the world. The actual physical part of it has not yet been transformed. 3D printing will transform that. We're kind of in a preliminary phase of that. I've written about the Lifecycle of Technologies, and there's usually a point where visionaries see that this is going to revolutionize everything, and they see it as an exponential progression. They're visionaries, but exponentials are not instantaneous. And so if you remember the internet boom in the 1990s, if you had the website address dog.com, you were a billionaire. And around the year 2000, the financial community said, no, wait a second, you can't really make money on these internet companies. And we had the internet crash that almost took down the world economy. Hopefully, we're sophisticated enough now not to have that happen with 3D printing. 3D printing can do some very interesting things. Singularity University had an opening where every instrument in the band was printed on a 3D printer. But it's really not ready for prime time. We need submicron resolutions to do the most interesting things like print out clothing. The resolution's improving at a rate of about 100 in 3D volume per decade. We'll get to submicron in around 2020. Right now, it's, depending on the technology, 3 to 10 microns. So we can do interesting things, but it's really not precise enough. People say, oh, great, when we print out clothing, there goes the fashion industry. But look at other industries that have already been transformed from physical products to digital products. Like, for example, music, movies, and books. If I wanted to send you one of those products just a few years ago, I'd send you a FedEx package. And indeed, there's an open source market with millions of high quality, free songs and documents and books and videos and movies, and you can have a very good time for free with these no-cost media products. People still spend money to read Harry Potter, see the latest blockbuster, get music from their favorite artist. So what happened to the revenues of those industries? They actually went up, not down, despite the fact that you can have a very good time without spending money, fueled by the ease with which those products are distributed and promoted, and we use AI to tell you you're going to like this movie and so forth. Same thing will happen with fashion. There'll be lots of open source designs. You can dress quite well by downloading for free a cool design on your phone, printing it out at pennies per pound. People will still spend money for clothes from a hot fashion designer. That's going to be pretty much the model for going forward. The open source market is a great equalizer. The proprietary market will be the basis of the economy going forward. The 2020s will be able to manufacture more and more things. Ultimately, by the end of the 2020s, just about everything. People are already putting together houses and buildings through prefabricated modules, some of which are printed on a 3D printer. A 3-story office building was snapped together in 3 days recently in Asia. It's kind of an experiment, but that will be a mainstream manufacturing technology for buildings and houses, again, in the 2020s. That will revolutionize manufacturing. Food, I mentioned vertical agriculture. We're using up 40% of the usable land now through horizontal agriculture. That was a big advance 10,000 years ago. Ultimately, we can produce food and have it be subject to the 50% deflation rate that's attendant to information technology. You can buy an iPhone or an Android phone that's twice as good as the one 2 years ago for half the price. We put some of the improved price performance in price and some of it into performance. You get better products for less money. That's not been true of technologies that are not information technologies. But once they become information technologies, they're subject to this deflation rate. Ultimately, we'll be able to produce physical things very inexpensively, including houses. People say, yeah, but we're going to run out of land. Yes, we can make houses inexpensively. We can produce the physical things we need. We can produce food. But we're all crowded together already. Well, we're only crowded together because we've decided to crowd ourselves together. Cities were an invention so that we could congregate, so that we could play and work together. With the advent of virtual reality, where we can meet together, have meetings like this will be feasible just, even if I'm hundreds of miles away. I would say 5 to 8 years from now. I'm involved with a project to actually try to do that. We already have video conferencing. It's not totally realistic, but my work group is around the world, and we work quite well. People are already spreading out as a result. When we really get highly realistic virtual and augmented reality going in the next 5 years or so, that's another technology that's not quite ready for prime time, but will be around 2020. We'll spread out. Try taking a train trip anywhere in the world, United States, Europe, Asia. You'll see that 95% of the land is unused, and what is used, 40% is for agriculture. So we'll actually have plenty of land as well. Energy, Larry Page and I did a study for the National Academy of Engineering on emerging energy technologies. We focused on solar. It is growing exponentially. It's a very smooth exponential curve. For the last 30 years, we've been doubling the number of watts produced by solar every 2 years. So 4 years ago, it was 0.5%. People said, 0.5%, nice thing to do, kind of a fringe player. That's not going to solve the problem. Ignoring the exponential growth, just the way it was ignored with the internet and ignored with the Genome Project. 0.5% is only 8 doublings from 100%. 2 years later, I presented this to the Prime Minister of Israel, who was actually in my class at the Sloan School in the 1970s. And he said, Ray, do we have enough sunlight to do this with, to double what was then 7 more times? And I said, yes, after we double 7 more times, we'll be using 1 part in 10,000 of the sunlight that falls on the Earth. We have 10,000 times more than we need. Okay, now it's doubled again. It's 2%. People still dismiss it because 2% is kind of a fringe player, ignoring the exponential growth. That's 6 doublings from 100%. And there's a similar story for geothermal, for wind. You go a mile this way, there's thousands of times more energy than we need in the form of heat. I convinced Larry to focus on solar because there's much more track record for solar than geothermal. But again, we have unlimited resources once we use these 21st century technologies. So all of these aspects of manufacturing are going to become information technologies. We're not quite there yet. That's kind of the last frontier, but the world of physical things will become information. So let me focus a little bit on the impact of employment. People say, oh, manufacturing jobs will go away. They've already largely gone away. If I were a prescient futurist in 1900, I would say, okay, 38% of you work on farms, manufacturing food, and 25% of you work in factories. So that's 2/3 of the population manufacturing food or physical products. But I predict by the year 2015, that'll be 2% on farms and 9% in factories. And people go, oh my God, we're going to be out of work. And I would say, well, don't worry. We're going to create new jobs to replace the old jobs that go away. And people would say, great, what new jobs? And I would say, I don't know, we haven't invented them yet. It's not a great political answer. It remains the answer today. It happens to be true. Now, if I were really prescient, I would say, oh, well, you get jobs creating websites and doing data analytics on large data and creating and marketing apps on mobile devices, nobody would have any idea what I'm talking about. I could also say that I think 20% of the workforce is going to be thinking about poetry and astronomy and science and art. That did not exist at the end of the 19th century. We had 58,000 college students, that's like a small university, in the United States at the end of the 19th century. We have 20 million today, 10 million who service them, that's 30 million people, that's 10% of the population, that's 20% of the workforce, studying poetry and astronomy and so on, and it's considered a useful and prestigious thing to do. So we're reinventing the nature of work. So we're creating new jobs at the top of the skill ladder while we destroy jobs at the bottom of the skill ladder. The skill ladder moves up. We've increased our investment in education as a result. In higher education, K through 12, we spend 10 times as much in constant dollars per student as we did in 1900. So one reaction that I've heard is, okay, yes, we're creating new jobs, but we don't create as many new jobs. We're destroying more jobs than we're creating. There's relatively few jobs at the top of the skill ladder. Well, let's look at the data. We had 24 million jobs in 1900. We have 142 million jobs in the United States today. Okay, but what about as a percentage of the population? Well, we've got, because the population has increased through immigration, well, we went from 30% of the population to 44%, so a 50% increase in the percentage of the population that has jobs. Okay, but are these new jobs really any good? Well, for one thing, they pay 11 times as much in constant dollars per hour. We've reduced the work year from 3,000 hours to 1,800 hours, and people still make 6 times as much per year. And the jobs are much more interesting. I mean, you were happy a century ago if you had a back-breaking job that gave you no gratification, but you had the gratification of putting food on your family's table. Not everybody loves their jobs and their careers, but increasingly people get a certain amount of their life satisfaction, their identity, their self-actualization from their employment. We're moving up Maslow's hierarchy. 65% of the jobs in the United States today are information jobs of one kind or another, including those 20% who are involved in higher education, not to mention K through 12, where we also have a much higher fraction of the population working. So people say, okay, well, all of that's been, there's a group of economists that say, yes, all of that's true, but it's not going to remain true. And it hasn't been true recently. That's not true. These statistics have continued. 5 or 6 years ago, there was really no mobile app economy. Lots of people are making money in new ways through all kinds of creative uses of apps and devices and the internet. These devices existed 5 or 6 years ago. They were pretty useless and didn't do much, and there were really no apps to speak of. There's all kinds of ways that people are making money. The statistics actually have a hard time keeping up with that because they're kind of creative new ways of making a living that aren't fully tracked, but the statistics are continuing. We're continuing to be more creative with work. Now, the kind of political turmoil we've seen, if you will, is fueled not by competition from other countries like Mexico or China. It is fueled by an insecurity having to do with this issue because we have much better information about the world, so people can see, gee, I'm driving a truck and I've heard about these self-driving vehicles, and the people who lose their jobs aren't always the same people who get the new jobs. So there is actually an issue of economic security, despite the fact that all the statistics are moving in the right direction. A larger and larger fraction of the population has jobs. The jobs are more and more flexible, more and more interesting, moving up Maslow's hierarchy, but people are concerned about their economic security. I mean, the model where you kind of adopted a trade, learned a profession, do that for 40 years and retire, that model is already gone. And personally, I don't believe in retirement because we're going to stay young indefinitely. That's a whole nother story. So I think there is a legitimate political issue, how we can provide a certain amount of security without destroying incentives. That's a complicated issue. The reality, though, is continuing to move in the right direction. And we've moved our skills up, partly through education, as I mentioned, but also by enhancing our brains by merging with technology, which is already the case. How many of you could do your jobs or get your education without these brain extenders, which is what they are? Nobody could do their work without them. We're using them constantly. People increasingly think of them as an extension of their memories and of their minds and of their thinking capacity. We will ultimately merge with them physically. I think that's an arbitrary distinction. You know, whether these devices are inside our bodies or brains or outside doesn't really matter. You know, putting it inside my body, I think, would be convenient. I wouldn't lose it that way. But that is where we're headed. Another exponential trend is miniaturization. Increasingly, we actually are putting computerized devices in our bodies and brains right now for medical issues. Ultimately, that will expand our thinking directly, but they're already brain extenders. So we're increasing our intelligence through education and also through extending our brain power with these brain extenders. And that's how we actually keep up with the rising skill ladder. So in my mind, it's not an alien invasion of intelligent machines from Mars to displace us. We've always created tools to extend our reach. You know, we couldn't reach the fruit at that higher branch 1,000 years ago, so we created a tool to extend our physical reach. Who here could build this building? We've created machines that extend the power of our muscles. And that girl in Africa with her smartphone can access all of human knowledge. None of us could do that without these machines that extend our range. We're going to literally extend the power of our intelligence as we merge with AI in the future. We're going to have a very creative future. We need to think creatively. There is legitimate social issues, how we want to manage the anxiety that goes along with this kind of change. The change is going to happen faster and faster, and people say, well, people can't keep up with it. Actually, people keep up with it remarkably well. Some new development comes, a new cure for a disease, a new feature on a smartphone. People adopt it in a day, and they celebrate it. And then, you know, a year later, we can't remember when it ever wasn't the case that this was true. I mean, can you imagine a world without search engines or social networks? It wasn't so long ago when that was the case. So we actually get used to positive change very quickly. Thank you very much.